Welcome to the FCC. Thank you all for being here today. I'm Morgan Davis. I'm one of the correspondent governors here at the FCC. We're very excited to be talking about rugby today, finally getting the Sevens back after 3 years. So today is going to be a bit of Sevens talk, a bit of general rugby talk, a bit of Hong Kong rugby talk. So hopefully you guys have some questions, and I know we have some good comments and stories to come from our speakers. On Zoom, I think, Seb, can you hear us?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, great. We have Sebastian Bryan. Seb grew up in Hong Kong and currently plays rugby for Sandy Bay. He unfortunately, for us anyways, has been traveling for rugby, so couldn't join us in person today, but has graciously decided to appear on Zoom. We also have Harry Laidler with us. He is a Hong Kong native and also a Sandy Bay rugby player. And we're also very happy to have Spura Sitol, a South African rugby union player and a recent arrival in Hong Kong. He played for the Springbok Sevens team. So welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks. To get started, why don't we talk a little bit about how you guys got into rugby in the first place? Seb, do you want to start for us on Zoom? What's your rugby story?
So I was originally brought down to a Sandy Bay training, I think at the age it starts, which must be about 3 or 4. And my dad was actually coaching. So my first experience of rugby was down in Port Phillip. I can't say the rugby coaching was too high tech. I think we played mostly hot potato and bulldogs, but it obviously put me in good stead for the next couple of years. And then after that, moved back to the UK for school and university and carried on playing rugby all the way through. And when I graduated, moved out to Hong Kong with the intention of hopefully playing rugby as a profession. And by chance, the club I joined, Hong Kong Cricket Club, ended up forming an alliance with Sandy Bay. So it's gone full circle, which has been pretty amazing to be at the club currently that I started at. But that's been my experience. I was in Hong Kong for a bit and ended up getting a trial with the Sevens program when I was about 21, and I've been doing that for the last 6 or 7 years, and it's been an amazing experience. And I don't really know where the time's gone, but it's been enjoyable.
Great, thanks. Harry?
Pretty similar to Seb, actually, except I started playing my rugby down at football club. So was at football club for my minis and juniors. Again, same as Seb, the coaching wasn't the best standard. My dad was coaching as well, but moved out to the UK for school and university as well at Northumbria. And during COVID, when it was starting, I had to finish uni online, and one of the contacts at Sandy Bay just said, you fancy coming back and playing for us? It looks like season's going to be starting here, and it wasn't going to be starting in the UK. So made the decision to move back. Similar as Seb, got a trial at the Sevens, and that's where I've been for the last sort of year and a half. Again, time's flown by, and it's sort of living the dream at the moment.
Great. Spura?
Yeah, well, for me, I was born in South Africa, so a lot of rugby tradition over there. The school that I went to was an all-boys school. In my junior school, I think there was about 1,200 students, and we all play rugby. It's non-negotiable, and same in high school with 2,000 students. Everyone has to play. You have to have a special reason not to play. So, so for me, that was how it all started. I was not a good rugby player at first. I couldn't make teams, but I was very fast. So that's how I made the teams most of the time. It's just tap the ball and run. I started to obviously enjoy it as time went on. In high school, the plan was to probably become a professional athlete because that was my main sport. But my last year of school, I made South African schools at the time, and I really didn't want to make South African schools because it clashed with athletics, because I was still running for South Africa at that stage. But I made my professional debut at 18 when I was still in school, which made it easier for me to transition into rugby. So yeah, and then after that I went to Durban to the Sharks, Natal Sharks. I was at Natal Sharks for probably about 10, 11 years. played Super Rugby, Curry Cup. I played for South Africa when I was at the Sharks. I played Springbok Sevens also when I was there. Thereafter, I spent a year in Port Elizabeth, playing in the now URC. It's a European competition. So I played there for 1 year and spent the last 2 years, last year and this year in France, playing for Neo in the Federal 1 and National. And yeah, got the call also. I was at a stage of my life where I was really a little bit overwhelmed with the pressure. I needed a little bit of a calm down. It's been 15 years now professional for me, obviously starting at 18. Yeah, so I just needed somewhere where I could come, which still had a good rugby culture, where I could play good rugby and also explore other avenues. And Hong Kong was perfect, and Sandy Bay was the perfect choice also. So yeah.
Was that a hard decision to come to Hong Kong, knowing kind of the state of play in Hong Kong at the moment? I mean, you've only been here for a couple months, but we're still dealing with masks and restrictions if you do want to do sports.
Yeah, definitely. I think coming from France, where said before, COVID doesn't really exist at the moment. There's no masks. Guys come to training when they're sick with COVID. You just have to wear a mask at training. That's the only time guys wear masks. So, and the rugby as well was full on going. We were traveling up and down in France with no problems. Coming here, I knew obviously of the restrictions, but I wasn't really 100% sure of how intense it is really. But it's been great so far. I think the way that Hong Kong rugby's handled the whole situation with transitioning back from not playing any rugby at all to having to train and play has been great. I mean, I haven't struggled at all besides with the heat, but yeah, but it's been great.
Yeah. Great. And Harry, how did you find that transition coming back to Hong Kong and with COVID?
It was strange, and I think the biggest sort of challenge for players in Hong Kong, especially initially, is just sort of the lack of understanding of what's actually happening at the weekend. Is the game going to go ahead? And you just have to sort of put your head down and think about what you can control. And especially with the Sevens program, more recently, or towards the start of the year, we've had to really just focus on what we can control. And, you know, the government have different protocols in place, and it's a case of, right, you turn up and we train hard, recover, and expect to be training tomorrow unless told otherwise. So I think it's just sort of having a really resilient mindset. And I think it kind of is starting to show a bit more with the lads, having that mindset of just next job, especially on the pitch.
Mm-hmm. And Seb, how have you found it, especially given that you've been traveling recently and doing that transition back and forth and dealing with other countries and maybe some restrictions there?
Yeah, Harry was spot on with what he was saying about it. It definitely makes you appreciate rugby in the present as opposed to constantly looking forward to different tournaments or week fixtures in a week's time, month's time. It makes you really take each game as it comes. But with all the traveling, it's been a real test. We've done some crazy trips that have resulted in, I think I did about 7 or 8 weeks in hotel quarantine last year. And it really makes you realize how much you love the sport, to be constantly on your own and away from friends and family. The toughest, I think we did a 4-day trip. We had to go play in this tournament in Dubai and then ended up doing a 3-week quarantine stint. But it really, in a weird way, when you're so disconnected, it helps you get closer as a team because we're all in it together in separate rooms, constantly on Zoom, constantly on WhatsApp, catching up. But it was an experience like none other. And I mean, obviously, I wouldn't say I wouldn't change it, because I definitely could have easily done with a bit more time back in Hong Kong last year. But it's been really, really unique, and it's given me a good chance to sort of catch up with loads of people back in the UK that you wouldn't normally. And it's made you also get quite innovative with how you keep fit and train, which has been good from when we, as Harry said, you just suddenly find out that we're not training for 4 weeks, and next thing you know, you're on someone's rooftop lifting water bottles and suitcases filled with books. And so it gets a nice break from the normal gym and field workouts.
Yeah, tell us more about that. How have you guys kept up with the conditioning and the training, given the fact that you don't always know you have access to a proper facility?
Yeah, well, luckily now I actually built a full home gym outside, so I'm good to go. And Spur and Harry, you're always welcome to come over and use it. But before that, especially when we're first getting into it, it was just absolute chaos. You just deal with what you can, bring bands, lots of running, sneak to the beaches before the lifeguards come out and tell you can't use them. It was a pretty wild experience, but it was okay. The main thing was just communicating with each other, doing what we were allowed to do, and getting good guidance as well from coaches on like everyone sharing different ideas on how to stay fit. And the main thing is just that communication, like in the Sandy Bay group, just sharing what you're doing, different hikes, different routes, different home workouts, and just keeping in touch and trying to motivate each other, because if you're just on your own, you get a bit lost, and it's pretty easy not to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Harry, anything in particular you found useful?
I think it is definitely gives people a chance to do things that they enjoy. With restrictions, sometimes you're not allowed to gather in groups and things like that, and it's a case of getting in what you can rather than being perfect. So if it's a case of going for a hike or getting some sprints done on a beach or something like that, it's not something that you'd normally get to do, especially now that gyms are open again. So as long as psychologically, you're able to get up and look forward to what you're doing. That's what Sebi's saying about having that sort of social interaction with people is so important. I think rugby is one of those sports where you're constantly in and around your best mates, and then suddenly it's like, right, you can't see your mates anymore. You feel like you're grounded or something when you're younger. So it's definitely strange in that sense, and a case of sort of almost using training as a tool to release some of that frustration.
Yeah. And so I know with the sevens planning, it's been a lot of back and forth, and we've only just found out there's going to be food there. How has that been on you guys as players? I mean, do you know exactly what you're in for in the next couple of weeks?
Not really, to be honest. I think, like I said earlier, you focus on what you can control. And a lot of the times you're told where to go, what to wear, what to bring. And that's kind of the mindset to have. So just don't get too bogged down on the details that have nothing to do with rugby in a way.
Mm-hmm. Seb, anything to add as far as the tests you guys are facing, or any other preparations?
No, yeah, I'd agree with Harry. I mean, you have to fill quite a few WhatsApps asking different questions to do with restrictions and what's allowed and what's not allowed. And as Harry said, we really don't know. We mostly get our information from the SCMP, just like everyone else, but we just concentrate on what we can concentrate on, which is the rugby side of things, and take care of that. And then the rest of it, it's all just outside noise. Our main focus for now is just Australia on Friday night. That's it. You don't need to worry about how boozed up everyone's going to be in the stands if they can't have food. But I'm sure we'll be dealing with the aftermath on that with friends and family come the Monday, seeing how they're feeling.
And what are your expectations for the sevens this year? I mean, given it's going to be different. What do you feel like the vibe is going to be? What are you going in with the mindset of?
I haven't given it too much thought, to be honest. Like, genuinely just focusing on the rugby. I think people have been told that they can't go to the sevens. The sevens hasn't been on, and like anything, if you're told you can't do something, you want it even more. So I think there's going to be a good atmosphere, and I think a bit of a show, sort of the grand opening of Hong Kong, I guess, in a way. But I haven't really given it too much thought in terms of the atmosphere or the drinking and the eating, like Seb was saying.
Seb, any other thoughts on that one?
No, yeah, Harry's right there. I mean, the one massive benefit of it is that having been living back here for 7 years, you speak to quite a lot of people who've actually never managed to secure tickets, and they think the Sevens is maybe an expat event for overseas fans. So I know there's been a massive push to sell out the tickets that we're allowed to, and I think it's going really well. So I think it will give loads of people an opportunity to actually attend their first Sevens, which for a lot of Hong Kongers is a must do. But as Harry said, just focusing more on the rugby, and obviously we'll be going into it as a massive underdog team. So really the main thing for us is just to get out there and try and express ourselves on the field and ultimately enjoy it, because having played previously, it's just an unimaginable experience how good it is. And it's the reason I'm sure Harry came back here. It's the first major memory I have of rugby growing up, is attending the Sevens and having the dream to play in it one day. So again, you just enjoy it, soak in the atmosphere, and just really look forward to actually playing some rugby for the first time in Hong Kong in 3 years.
And Spur, you've played in Hong Kong before in the Sevens in the past. So how did you find it when you played here?
Well, when I played here, I played a couple of times here, twice actually, and I think there's two tournaments in the series that we always looked forward to. Obviously, your home tournament that you had to win, and we always look forward to the Hong Kong Sevens for two reasons. Because of the crowd, I think I've got a memory of playing here. I think the last time I played here, we played the plate final. I think it was against Australia, and it was really great. Like, I just get chills thinking about it. We couldn't hear each other talk on the field because of the crowd was so loud, and it's just the atmosphere was overwhelming. So it was really great, and obviously the prize money. It was the only one. It was the only tournament in the circuit that had a prize money. So I think when the teams come down to play here, there's a lot to play for. I think obviously the situation with Sevens right now is better than it was a couple of years ago, but with certain incentives like that, I think it builds for a great tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Seb, you mentioned you guys are an underdog going in this year. What are you seeing as far as the competition this year, and what are your expectations for the teams you're up against?
Yeah, so that'll be a bit different to when Saburi used to play for South Africa. I'm sure they'd go in very much favourites, so a bit more expectation on them. But we've seen our pool. Our pool is about as tough as you can get, with Australia, Samoa, and New Zealand. So we'll take each game as it comes. And I mean, our main aim for the pool is to play our brand of rugby and still try and score tries, entertain the crowd, and just take each passage as it comes. And then after that, we'll look towards who we're playing, and hopefully try and pick up a couple of wins along the way. But again, it's one of those things you can't get too bogged down in who you're playing against in the occasion. At the end of the day, it's just rugby, and the beauty of Sevens is it's 14 minutes. It's over so quickly, so anything can happen, and hopefully we can make something magical happen at some point in the tournament.
Who do you guys think the hottest competition is this year?
I'm going to be biased and say South Africa. But I think South Africa this year hasn't really played well. They played well at times. We've won a couple of tournaments and the Commonwealth Games also. So I think it's going to be tough this year. But like Seb said, it's only 14 minutes. Anything can happen. You know, a world-class team can lose against the underdogs at any stage, you know, and that's the exciting thing about Sevens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. South Africa, obviously going to be a tough team to beat. New Zealand are going to be up there as well. I think the key thing with Hong Kong, like Sabura was saying, is that teams want to do well here, and they see it as a sort of platform to show what they've been working on, a platform for themselves individually, and it puts us as the host team in a tricky position, because I think if we were drawn this pool in any other tournament in the world, it would be a case of, right, lads, go out, play with, like, there's no pressure on us. But it's the first Hong Kong Sevens in 3 years, and there is an expectation for us to put on a show. So I think the lads will be up for it though.
And then you guys have South Korea right afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So it's going to keep going. Lots of.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, for the last year and a bit that I've been full time with the Sevens, that's kind of what I signed up for, but haven't really got. So I'm excited for the tournaments to be coming thick and fast now. It's, I think, 2 weeks after South Korea's UAE. So Seb's obviously experienced quite a lot of that, being in the program longer than me. But that's what you want to be doing, playing in tournaments frequently. Gives more of the lads a chance to put their hands up as well for those big tournaments and ultimately getting selected for that final 12.
Great. Seb, what are some of the places that you've played in the past year?
The past year, we've been all over really, and as Harry said, each tournament's sort of been standalone, so it's been maybe a smaller selection of players that have gone, but over the next coming months, we've got so many tournaments. It's going to be great to rotate through the squad, especially for a few of the younger guys who've joined and are really, really looking quite sharp. But the last year, we did 2 World Series legs back-to-back in Canada, which was a great experience. They really know how to put on a tournament. We've been to Dubai, and just recently, from this weekend, we came back from Bangkok, which is unfortunately why I can't join you guys today. And yeah, I think that's been pretty much it for the last year. But normally we have a really extensive schedule, and that's been one of the most amazing things of being in the Sevens program, having been able to play rugby in your rugby sort of staples such as Fiji and Australia, and then also traveling around Asia and playing in some places you wouldn't maybe think are traditionally associated with rugby, but draw a massive crowd anyway, like Sri Lanka and Borneo.
So you guys have all played all over. What are your favorite places to play, and where do you think are the most difficult places to play? Spro, do you want to start?
The most difficult for me on the circuit probably would have been South Africa, because obviously the pressure to perform, it can get pretty hectic, the lead up to the tournament itself. Whenever we played at home, we were never really the well-supported team. Most South Africans tend to support New Zealand, and
Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh.
so it was really tough. But the best tournament I've played in, probably definitely Hong Kong, without a doubt. Yeah, it was amazing when I played here. Really great.
One of the trickiest sort of period of playing for me was definitely at school and university in England. The north of England during winter months, if anyone is unaware, is not a pleasant place to be. So some cold winter nights in December and January, frozen pitches, no one watching. And I think that's when it's really tested whether this is for you. I'd say favorite place to play. When I was younger, playing in the Sevens showcase at the stadiums, just, you know, that's why ultimately you're still playing, I think. As a Hong Kong kid growing up, that's the be all and end all. And it's kind of been tunnel vision since I was 5 or 6.
Seb, what about you?
Yeah, definitely not biased here, but my favorite place without a doubt is Hong Kong. It's just so well run, and it's just always absolutely bouncing, and the whole city comes alive with it. And then after that, we just recently had the World Cup of Sevens in South Africa, which was an amazing place to play, and very, very tricky as well. And another favorite, we often go to Fiji for their regional tournament, and I've never experienced anything like it. It's just tricky to play, so hot, and everyone's so friendly until you get on the pitch, and suddenly you've got 12 members of the Fijian army trying to take your head off, finish up with them, and then you've got the police force next, and those guys, biggest smiles, biggest hugs after the game, but for those 14 minutes, oh my gosh, you better find somewhere safe to stand, because there is nowhere where you're safe on that pitch.
Do you have any particular favorite memories or stories from your time playing rugby?
Favorite memories. I mean, you always remember your first couple of caps are always quite special. And then there was one particular one, in my first leg of the Asian series, we finished up in Sri Lanka and it was absolutely horrendous weather, so muddy, and we had a World Cup qualification spot on the line and went to extra time against Japan and beat Japan in extra time, securing all the stuff we needed to do. And it was the first time I'd beaten Japan, which obviously around here there are huge rivals. So that's probably up there as my favorite memory.
Harry, what about you?
I'll go for one that's nothing to do with playing. One of my memories of the Hong Kong Sevens, though. I must have been about 6 or 7 at the time, and the Hong Kong team, the Sevens team, were my idols at the time, and I'd always sit right at the front of the stands and wait for the teams to come around after they'd finished playing on a Sunday evening. And my favorite player was Keith Robertson at the time, and every year I'd pester him for his shirt, and I managed to sort of guilt trip him into agreeing to giving me his shirt. He said that he couldn't take his shirt off when he was walking around because of media, but he would meet me by the gates at like 7:30 later that evening, and he'd give me a shirt. So I turned up at 7:30 waiting there, and didn't show up, and go to my parents crying, and I was like, I'm not playing rugby again, you know, this and that. I hate Keith. And I found him on Facebook and messaged him, and said, "Where were you, Keith? You've let me down." He said, "Sorry, mate. I was there looking for you. Must have been on the wrong side, giving it all that." But he said he would leave the shirt for me at football club a few days later, and sure enough, the shirt was there waiting for me, and I've still got that in my cupboard. So he redeemed himself in the end. It's funny because I think Seb's probably never heard that story, but we'll know Keith.
That's great. Yeah.
It's good. We're glad you didn't give up on rugby then.
Yeah.
Well, for me, my favorite was probably my first Seven season, the 2010-2011 season. We were second, right behind New Zealand with the last leg of the tournament left. We had Twickenham and Murrayfield. We played in Twickenham. We won that. We played Fiji in the final. And we were in this race in Murrayfield to win the series. And we managed to get to the final, and we played Australia. And we were 4 points behind, chasing the game from behind. And it was the last kickoff. I remember we had just scored, and we ran back, obviously for the kickoff. And obviously we had to kick off because we just scored. And the buzzer went as our fly half Cecil Africa had the ball in his hands. We kicked it off. We contested. We won the turnover. And it just happened to be that I was at the back of the ruck. And I picked the ball up, ran around, handoff, scored in the corner, and we won the series. And that became the try of the year for South Africa that year. So it's definitely one of my best moments. Yeah.
Great.
And we won the series. Yeah. Yeah.
Of course. Wonderful. Well, on a slightly more serious note, I'm curious about what you guys see as the future of rugby in Hong Kong. You know, a lot has been riding on the Sevens coming back, and how things are going to go. Hopefully everything goes very smoothly with the organization. But Spur, maybe we can start with you since you're new to it. And what do you see as the future of the sport in the city?
So I'm pretty new to Hong Kong. I've been here just over 2 months, but I've been really involved a lot with Sandy Bay under 18 boys. And I've done a little bit of coaching, well, a lot of coaching at West Island school with the under 18 boys there. And I think the way that it's going right now, it's really great. I think the potential, especially for the youngsters coming through right now who have been starved for rugby for the last 3 years, is really great to see. I've coached in South Africa a little bit when I was at the Sharks and stuff, and obviously different places, but I think here the drive for wanting to learn more. A lot of the kids that I coach are really hungry just to learn, just to play and develop. And I think the way that things are looking right now, it's definitely great for Hong Kong rugby. I think the youth that's coming through is really great, and I expect great things from Hong Kong rugby. Yeah,
That's good to hear. Harry?
As in terms of the future of Hong Kong, like Samora said, I think the key is developing local talent, because the World Rugby have changed the eligibility rules fairly recently. So it used to be if you've lived in any country for 3 years continuously, you could play for that country as sort of an adopted nation. That rule's now changed to 5 years, which kind of changes things, especially for a country like Hong Kong that attracts a lot of foreign players. It highlights the need for development within schools. And I think with Asian Games and Olympic qualification as well, in terms of sevens, you have to hold a Hong Kong passport. So developing local players is going to be key as well. And I think in terms of goal setting for the 15s and sevens programs, for Hong Kong rugby, it has to be qualifying for the World Series for the sevens. And the lads for the 15s have the qualification tournament for the World Cup, which is going to be going on this month, so or next month even. So I think those are sort of the key areas, but definitely developing local talent and using players of Samora's caliber that move to Hong Kong, picking their brains and exposing the local players to sort of different styles of rugby as well.
Seb?
Yeah, I mean, it shows just how much of a draw Hong Kong has as a city and a rugby city that we're still getting players like Sabura out even mid-COVID, and I'm just glad he joined my team and not one of the ones we're playing against, because as you can see, he's a pretty tough man to take down. But there's definitely loads on the horizon for Hong Kong rugby, and Hong Kong as a city is still, in my opinion, just one of the best places to be in the world. And we're always going to draw in those guys who are just finishing university, school, and want an experience and a challenge to come out here and play rugby and maybe do something else alongside it. So it's definitely back on the up. And recently in sevens, we've just brought in 5 or 6 guys from the academy who are all quite young, and the way they've been performing at training, it really shows that we've got some good players, especially people like Harry as well, coming through the ranks. So there's a lot on the horizon, and I've only got a couple of years left, probably at most. So I really, really hope we can leave Hong Kong rugby in a better place than when I first joined. But as Harry said, there are 2 main aims through both programs, which is qualify for the 15s World Cup, which the boys are over in Dubai trying to do at the moment, and eventually try and get Hong Kong on the World Series, which we've come painstakingly close to a few times. But hopefully in the next year or 2, we can make our dream sort of a reality.
Seb, is there anything in particular you think Hong Kong can do to stir up interest locally in the schools with younger kids when it comes to rugby?
So, I mean, I've been involved with a few of the outreach programs, and that's definitely the way to do it, is just get people into schools, especially more of the local schools, and get the kids moving. A lot of the rugby specific stuff you don't really need to bring in till later. As Sabura was saying, I think you can just be an athlete first and foremost, and then learn how to catch and pass later. So I think it's just making kids aware of sevens and 15s, getting them moving, and then hopefully fostering a bit of a love for the game that you can develop later on when they join the local clubs here. And I also think the sevens will be a massive chance. If you look on the Friday night, I think loads of the tickets are going to local schools. I know there's a few people. Well, one of our main players, Saloom, who's the face of Hong Kong rugby. He started his love by watching the sevens as a young kid and getting into the sport then. So hopefully this sevens can produce a few more of them in a few years' time.
Anything else you guys would add for driving more interest in Hong Kong?
Like Seb said, it's just, I think, having players that they can look up to. Players like Saloom, Kadu, Lee, MK, who recently got capped in Bangkok. I think having those people they can look up to and just sort of showing them how good it can be and what a team sport it is. There's nothing like it. So, yeah.
For me, I think the best way to obviously start, I think, is just exposure. I think a lot of the kids have to get exposed to the sport at a very young age in order to create an interest in it and obviously develop with it. And obviously, having been involved in some schools, I think a lot more can be done with exposure to even the younger kids with rugby balls and just playing around. You know, obviously it doesn't have to be serious at the moment, but just them knowing the sport, understanding the sport goes a long way.
Mhm. Great. Well, I want to open up for questions if anyone has any. I think we have a mic that will be passed around. So if you just want to put your hand up, we'll be happy to take those. Anyone? Don't be worried. It doesn't have to be too serious. We can keep chatting for a minute while you guys think of any questions that you have. Why don't we talk about some more of your fun stories? I know, Spura, you've been all over the place.
Yeah.
You must have some very good rugby stories to tell us.
Well, the funny story is not really funny, but like, yeah, we had Commonwealth Games in India. I think it was 2010. Also, my first real exposure to professional sevens. And we spent about 3 weeks preparing in Dubai with our team, which started awfully because we played against UAE. And one of our key players, who was actually a coach now in South Africa, Morris Schoolman, got injured. He fractured his orbital bone. So he was out of the tournament, which was like a shock to the team because obviously he was a senior. And we traveled up to India and we were there. I think we had 2-3 days to prepare before our tournament started. And in the eating hall, obviously you could eat whatever you wanted, but some of our boys decided to eat the seafood pie 2 days before the tournament, and some of the guys are really sick, so it was a worry. I think on the first day we played with half of our squad. Yeah, not at full tilt, but yeah, we managed to win bronze medal that year, so which ended up great actually. Yeah.
Okay, good. So imagine what you could have done had they not had the fish pie.
Yeah, definitely. I think they learned their lesson. No more seafood before the game.
Yes, it was a reasonable plan.
Yeah.
Did I see there was a hand up?
Hello, this is Janice from Mingpao. So this is I'm going to ask something related to the government COVID restrictions because before they have put so many restrictions on the team players or who are not based in Hong Kong, and also they have put restrictions like forbidden the audience for eating before, although they have loosened all those COVID restrictions on the audience. But what is your point of view as a player on the government's restrictions on COVID? And also, have you guys contacted with other rugby players, and how do they feel on attending the game in Hong Kong? Thank you.
Great, thank you. So just to make sure everyone heard that. So that was around the COVID restrictions. How might the foreign players feel that are coming in to play in the sevens, and how you guys are handling everything that's come up, how you feel about those restrictions. Harry, do you want to start?
That's easy answer. You don't have an opinion about the social distancing restrictions. You get on with it and do as you're told. I think there'll probably be some nerves from some of the foreign players coming in. Can almost guarantee they haven't been to Hong Kong since COVID has started. So probably some nerves, but I'd say a lot of excitement as well around the tournament. And I think everyone's been through so much the last 3 years that it's worth it. If they've gone this far, it's worth going through maybe a few more sort of hurdles and restrictions to play on the home of sevens.
Well, for me, I think definitely, like Harry said, I think it's safety first. We just got to respect the rules. I mean, it's the same with the game of rugby. There's rules that you have to respect and go by. Otherwise, the game wouldn't happen the way that it does. And from a player's perspective, coming into this tournament with the restrictions, I think it's what it is. I think most of the teams will prepare, obviously, in their camps, the way that they're going to live here. And I think also the last couple of years, a lot of teams have been exposed to a lot of different rules around COVID. So I don't think it will be too much of a hassle for them to just respect the rules and just go about their game. I think at the end of the day, we're here to play rugby, and I think that's what players should concentrate on instead of concentrating on this and that rule. Just respect it and move on to the rugby. Yeah.
Seb, anything to add?
No, I think it's all pretty much been covered. It's nothing new for us as players in Hong Kong and abroad. All the tournaments I've played, they've had quite stringent procedures. And then having spoken to players from other countries, I think everyone's just so excited to get to Hong Kong and play again. And as it's been 3 years since the last one, a lot of teams have developed and have new crops of players who maybe haven't had the opportunity to play out here, but have heard all the stories and all the good things. So everyone's just really, really excited to get out here and play. And as Harry said, we're rugby players. We're used to doing what we're told, especially when it comes to often things we might not want to do, like those early morning fitness sessions. So following the rules of the RATs and the PCRs is no big deal for us. We're just so used to it. So I think it's all more a feeling of excitement to the Sevens actually being back on, and happy to go with whatever restrictions need to be in place for that to happen.
I think I heard, yes, a question over here.
Thanks. I'd like to ask, what's the difference between playing in the URC and playing in the Super Rugby? Which is better? Which do you prefer? Do you think the competition's better in one or the other? Which do you think gives you the best development as teams coming from South Africa? I mean, are you happy with changing from Super to URC and everything? So your general thoughts about it.
For me, the biggest difference between, okay, well, firstly, with the Southern Hemisphere rugby, with the Super Rugby, I think it's different to the Northern Hemisphere. When we played in the Super Rugby, the games are a lot faster, a lot more skill-based. Obviously, playing against New Zealand, guys are offloading, and you're having quite big guys running at you also, which is, quite difficult. Whereas compared to the URC, the rugby was, obviously because of the weather, I think we played a couple of games where it was below freezing. And for South Africans, it was really tough. The game was a little bit slower also there, a lot more set piece based. So you have to have a really good set piece, obviously going into the game. But for me, I think, South Africa moving to URC, I think is a benefit for us because traveling all the way from South Africa to New Zealand is really tough. I remember my 1 year we were coached by Jake White. We played on a Saturday night, a quarterfinal against the Highlanders, and we had a semi-final against Crusaders in Christchurch on the Friday evening. So you can imagine we travel out of South Africa on that Sunday evening. You'll only arrive in New Zealand on Tuesday morning, early morning, with jet lag, and also having traveled so long to adjust back to the time. There's not real much time to train. It's literally get there, recovery, one training session and the game. And it's really tough. I remember playing that game and my ears were still buzzing from obviously just the change of atmosphere and all of this, a feeling of disorientation at times, obviously because of the jet lag and all of that. It's really tough. And obviously going up north it's a 10-hour plane ride. You sleep the same, the time zones are the same. The only difference is just the weather. So they both offer different things, but yeah. But definitely easier playing in the URC yeah, Super Rugby was really tough. Yeah.
I think we saw another question in the middle. Yes.
How do you feel about Team Great Britain playing moving forward as opposed to Wales, England? There's such a great rivalry. There's so many expats who love to see, England v Wales and England v, Hong Kong, whatever it may be. Is there sort of a feeling of a sense of you've kind of been robbed of playing those really great teams, or is it sort of just, sort of Great Britain for one? How do you feel about it?
It's an interesting one because it kind of potentially frees up spots in the World Series for teams like Hong Kong to qualify. So I guess from a biased point of view, it's potentially a good thing. But, growing up watching some of those clashes, it is a shame that they're not going to be able to compete against each other. I used to love watching them when I was little, and some good rivalries. It does make sense though in terms of pushing for like Olympic Games and things like that they play more as a sort of overall squad. But in terms of development of sevens, it may not be as beneficial in terms of there's not as many spots between the countries for players in the squad. And I know a lot of those sort of countries use that as a pathway to potentially develop 15s players as well. So it might be nice to see them sort of focus on the actual sevens programs in a sense, and focus on developing out and out sevens athletes rather than using it for development.
I think Harry said it all. I think it's been exciting to see the last couple of years, obviously before Great Britain, like teams like Ireland having to qualify and how they've improved their rugby. I think, like he says, if the sevens are playing well, the 15s will play well. It's a good feeder, obviously, to 15s rugby. And also not just that, but there are a lot of players who are really good sevens players, but not very good 15s players. So there's an opportunity there. I think that's, that's gone out the window right now. But obviously it makes it a little bit tougher playing Great Britain because you're playing against all these nations put together. So, yeah.
Seb, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean that's it. It's obviously a massive benefit for their rugby, getting the best players from free programs, and as they compete together in the Olympics, they'll definitely be a lot stronger after those 4 years of playing together. But having, trained against these guys, played against these guys, as what the flip side of the rugby getting better is that you're combining a lot of squads, so there'll be a lot of guys who have to go find something else to do, which is a massive shame, because there's some really, really good guys and really, really top players that might just be left out because you're streamlining down to 3. But I mean, Hong Kong's been lucky enough in that sense that we've actually had the Wales captain has come out to join Valley for the rest of the season. So there's plenty of other avenues to go and play rugby, but it is always a shame when you hear about these teams narrowing down or struggling with funding and players being left out of jobs. So hopefully they can all go and find a nice gig to get. And Sandy Bay are always looking for more players. If any of them do want to come over, I'm sure we can find a spot for them in the squad.
Yes, I think question over here.
Hi, I was interested when in answering the question about your favorite place to play rugby, that it was unanimously Hong Kong. Putting aside, that 2 out of 3 of you have personal connections to Hong Kong. Having grown up here, what do you think makes Hong Kong so special as a place to play rugby in? Is it something about the culture or the level of support that you have from organizations that you might not find elsewhere?
I think it's easy for me and Seb to say because we sort of grew up watching the sevens, but Hong Kong is inevitably become a melting pot for all different cultures and different people. And I think it's pretty inspirational to have a common goal and common drive towards something. And I feel like the sevens is sort of a culmination of that. And I think we've always been an underdog team, and it builds quite an interesting sort of cauldron effect when Hong Kong play. I mean, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about the cheers from the crowd. It's almost like it was yesterday, and it's really special. And I think it's just sort of holds that place in your heart.
For me, I think just the atmosphere at the stadium you can't compare it to the other stadiums. I remember the one tournament we played here, they were saying there is about 100,000 people in and outside the stadium. So the crowd inside the stadium and guys supporting from outside. Even when you warm up, there was a crowd of 10,000 or whatever outside just supporting, which is unheard of in the other tournaments. So I think just the atmosphere, the support of the Hong Kong people here is, you can't compare it to any other tournament. Yeah.
That's spot on. I think if you take the home crowd element out of it, the tournament is just so well run, especially for the players. The food, the transport, the hotels we stay in are all amazing. And then the biggest difference between Hong Kong and other tournaments is at other tournaments where the crowd is equally as good, once you maybe go 5 minutes outside of the stadium, people wouldn't even know there's a rugby match on. Whereas in Hong Kong, you'd be hard pressed to find anything else to do during the Sevens weekend, because the whole city just comes alive, and the way the atmosphere from the crowd spills out into all the bars and clubs and restaurants is pretty unique to Hong Kong. So I'd say that's why it ranks just so high up, not just in us Hong Kongers list, but in all rugby players lists as just the premium tournament.
Any last question? Great. Oh, yes, one more.
Thank you. Am I right in thinking we're going again with the Sevens in April at the usual time? Is that right? Yes, it is. So how do you guys feel about, is this seen as a little bit of a sort of warm up, a bit of a rehearsal, or is this full on? Because obviously we're used to a year between each tournament. And I just wondered how you guys were thinking. I know Hong Kong Sevens teams under quite a lot of pressure to put on a performance. How do you feel about then knowing that you're also then going to do it again quite a short time later? Just wonder what your thoughts were. And also just thanking Spura for coming, because no one comes to Hong Kong anymore. So it's really great that someone's actually come professionally to live in Hong Kong. It's great. But yeah, just wonder what your views are on, 2 tournaments in such a short period of time, and how you would approach that. How you'd approach that.
I think the mindset has to be just take each tournament as it comes. And I mean, great, it's double the fun. It's a chance to do it twice, right? Almost make up for lost time. So exciting in that sense, but I know the lads are just focusing on this tournament. After that, it'll be Korea. After that, will be UAE, whatever's next, potentially a World Series qualification. And when the Sevens rolls around again in April, then that's when the mindset will shift towards that. I think we have to just approach it as if it's another tournament at the end of the day. It's, in terms of the rugby, there's no changes.
Ben?
That's exactly it. Yeah, if we go into New Zealand seeing it as a warm-up tournament, I think it'll be very upset group of people at the end of the 14 minutes. So this is it. Hong Kong Sevens is back this November, and then, as Harry said, we've got other tournaments to focus on, and then we're lucky enough to have it again in April, and then maybe that one will be a bit more back to how it was for all the overseas fans, and then we'll go again if they want to run another 4 or 5 every year. I'm sure we'll all be happy to play in it. So I guess it's just a massive bonus that we get to play twice after having not had one for so long.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you guys very much. We're all excited for the Sevens. If you haven't gotten your tickets, get them. Or you can join the FCC raffle, drink some beers downstairs. You get a little raffle ticket, get some tickets that way. Thank you all very much for coming today. Really a pleasure to have you guys. Seb, you'll have to drop by the club another time when
Yes,
you're
please.
all clear. Let me give you guys little FCC goodie bags.
Oh, thank you.
And I'll have to trust you handing over to Seb as well.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Great. Yes.